I may be a little bit biased on this one because I was also the publisher of her book. And I'm going to tell you a few things about Caryn Sullivan before she speaks about how to live in the moment and prepare for the inevitable. Caryn Sullivan is an inspirational speaker, an award-winning columnist for the Pioneer Press, and the most recent author of Bitter or Better, Grappling with Life on the Op-Ed Page. She's nominated for a 2016 Midwest Book Awards finalist, and she finds out in less than 4 hours whether she is the winner in the inspirational category. So everybody, round of applause. We really want her to win. Caryn is a recovering attorney, and she weaves her intellectual curiosity and her empathetic heart into her writing and speaking. She's spoken to a variety of audiences, including Be the Match, Ameriprise, the Starkey Hearing Foundation, Fraser, the National Sheriff's Association, and the Minnesota Autism Society. A cancer survivor, widow, and mother of both a bone marrow transplant and her donor, Caryn's passion is helping others to also find the better in and out of life's experiences. My friend and my client, Caryn Sullivan.
Thank you, Kathy. And thank you all for sticking around. I know it's Friday afternoon. So far, Friday the 13th, the worst thing that's happened to me is I dropped my boxes of books when I was walking in late this morning, and 3 fabulous women who were attending helped me carry them in. So if you're still here, thank you all very much. What an amazing day. How do I follow all of these incredible women? You know, starting with Paula all the way down the line. But I think the one that got me the most is the singing OBGYN. I mean, honestly, who knew? Sound of Music, my family's personal favorite. Every one of my siblings and I own a copy of Sound of Music. The difference between me and Dr. Lisa is that when she was very young, the daughter who will graduate from college tomorrow asked me to please not sing. So I won't be singing to you today. So my topic, like Kathy said, is living in the moment, preparing for the inevitable. And I'm going to take you kind of down a dark road until I bring you out on the other side. So please just bear with me. Thinking back to December of 2009. Can anyone remember 2009? It was a very memorable December for me and my family. Just to give you some background, like Kathy said, I'm a recovering attorney, and that's because my son was diagnosed with autism in 1993 at a point in time where autism was not, part of our everyday conversation as it is today. And while I didn't know much about autism, I knew that this was not a good development. So I very quickly hung up my shingle and spent the next 20 years being his advocate, which I continue to do today, and becoming the family medical crisis manager because, as it turns out, we had one medical crisis after another, beginning with my husband's heart attack when he was 43, going into my breast cancer, which was quickly followed by my daughter having a bone marrow transplant for a very rare blood disorder. But in December 2009, my family was really doing pretty well. I have a blended family. My stepdaughter Katie had graduated from college, gotten a job with benefits, woohoo! Her brother had moved to Virginia. She was in Colorado. He too had graduated from college, had a job with benefits, and a girlfriend. Our son Jack, the one who has autism, had gone to a very unique and fabulous boarding school in New Hampshire, starting at age 15. And he was there in December of 2009. And our daughter, Julia, the caboose, who will graduate tomorrow, was a sophomore in high school. And she'd recovered from her disease, but she was still not an extremely healthy child. But, life was going on, and, things were as calm in the Sullivan household as they'd ever been. So when my sister-in-law, my brother's second wife, had a baby in November of 2009, I said I'd like to come out and help. So I went to Maryland, which is where I'm from, and I spent a few days with this chubby little baby girl named Izzy, and I fell in love with the baby all over again. So on Tuesday, December 15th, I was holding her, kind of inhaling that, fresh from the bath baby smell, and just kind of nuzzling her neck. And with no foresight whatsoever, I grabbed my phone and I called my husband at the office. And he too was a lawyer, and he had just finished what I later learned was a very contentious deposition. But he didn't mention that to me at the time. And so we kind of caught each other up a little bit, and then I said to him, I was just wondering what you would think. Steve and Sherry are older now, and I don't know who would take care of Isabel if, God forbid, something happened to them. Would it be okay with you if I told them that we would be her guardian? Absolutely. You didn't need to ask me that. I said, well, I knew that would be your answer, but the respectful thing was to ask you. So we hung up the phone. The day went on, and went out to dinner that night with my brother and his family. And when we got back to his house, I discovered I had missed calls on my cell. I connected with a doctor who was an ER doc in St. Paul who strangely had a Southern accent. In a conversation that was so surreal, it seemed like it was one that you would see on one of the medical dramas. I learned that Ted had died at United Hospital, surrounded by strangers, and that I was now what I have termed, a founding member of the freaking Widows Club. So the kids were scattered, as I mentioned. Julia was the one who was home alone, and they'd all planned to come home for Christmas, but Ted's death expedited things. Things changed in Maryland, and instead of me staying and helping Steve and Sherry, my brother bought a ticket like that, escorted me back to Minnesota, and was by my side for the days that followed. So one by one, the kids came home, and Jack was the last to arrive home. And the morning after he came home, I was in the kitchen, and I was trying to put my IV in so I could just mainline caffeine because I just needed to do something to stay awake. I was so exhausted. And Jack comes cruising into the kitchen, and he says, so Mom, I have 2 questions for you. I said, okay, Jack, lay them on me. Are we financially sound? And are you going to remarry? And I did the best that I could to respond, and then he just kind of cruised out of the kitchen. But he'd struck a nerve. You know those nationwide insurance commercials you see all the time where there's a couple and she's holding the baby and he's in the other room and he says, honey, have you called the insurance company yet? And she says, no, I'm washing the windows. And she's got the baby's fingers kind of messing up the windows. And then they'll show him and she'll be saying, honey, did you call the insurance company? And he'll say, no, I'm trying to find my keys, as he's launching them over the fence. Well, we had our own version of that. It wasn't about calling the insurance company. It was about having the talk. Honey, we really need to have a financial powwow. I know, but I'm flossing my teeth right now. Honey, we need to have the talk. Yeah, but I've got the pooper scooper. I was just going to go outside. So we never had the talk. But Ted had always said, I'm worth more dead than alive. And so when he died, I was left to wonder whether my jokester of a husband was telling me the truth when he said that. Because our roles had changed from being, two-income family to Ted being the wage earner, and I spent the money. He did the big planning, and I managed, the target runs and all of that. So I found myself just days before Christmas, in the year that he said, this year I'm doing the Christmas shopping, terrified about whether I could go to the Mall of America and shop for my kids, because I really didn't know the answer to Jack's question, whether I was financially sound. And I hadn't earned a paycheck for years. I had started writing for the Pioneer Press. When Julia had gotten ill, I started carrying Bridge Page, and then that morphed into me becoming a columnist. But I wasn't earning any money, and I didn't know if I needed to go back to work or not. So in the months that followed, I went through the process of really getting my arms around my new reality. And I had to go through some hoops because, for example, he had started a savings account at a bank for Katie's wedding. We knew she'd be getting married, and he hadn't put my name on it. And so I had to go through these hoops to be able to access that account to close it out. I had to go through the process of transferring titles to the car, dealing with the mortgage, and most importantly, setting up a trust for Jack, our son with autism, because we had planned to do it at the end of that year, but the two of us had never done it together. So things transpired, and I'm giving you the Reader's Digest. If you're really interested in the whole story, I hope you'll buy my book. But by April of that year, some various things had happened, and one of them was another very close friend had died of a heart attack. And then our Cavalier King Charles Spaniel developed, of all things, congested heart failure. And I had talked to the vet about what our steps would be, when we got to the point where Sarah's heart failed her. But of all things, the day that I found her splayed on the floor was a Saturday when the vet was out of town. And so a dear friend of mine who loves dogs came over and took me to an animal hospital that I'd never been to before. And I sat there cradling this dog who had felt like a baby to me when we had gotten her. In fact, when we got her, I carried around Sarah so often that, someone said, if she's going to learn to walk, you have to put her down. So here I was, holding this dog, and I had to make this wrenching decision about what I was going to do. And when I left there that day without Sarah, it struck me that I hadn't executed my living will because I was just too afraid to make a decision that seemed so final. I didn't really know what it would involve, but I was afraid that if I said that, if I'm in a coma, you should, unplug the tubes. Well, people have medical miracles, right? And I didn't want to end my life earlier than I had. But that four-legged animal taught me a very important lesson. And I realized after Sarah's death that the last thing I wanted to do was to put my loved ones in a position where they would have to make the decision about me that I had made for our beloved pet. So as I was listening to these women speak today, I was reminded that, one of my favorite sayings is that we're all students and teachers in life if we've chosen to be. We've had a lot of great teachers here today, haven't we? So in my life, ironically, my dog has been one of the most important teachers because she made me realize that in order to most fully live life, to truly enjoy life, we've got to prepare for the inevitable. Because it's crazy how we live life in denial, disregard, and even defiance of the one thing we know is going to happen, right? We're born with an expiration date, and yet we so often live as if we don't have one. But I've learned that we do. And so what I have done so that I can better enjoy life is I've created my box of love. Kathy, can you read the words on the front? Explore, discover, and dream. Inside this box are the documents that my family will need to make all of the decisions and to handle everything that I had to handle after Ted's death. I've made the decision that we had to address as a family in our darkest moment and about Ted, and I've purchased a burial plot next to his. The documents are in the box. I set up a trust account for my son, Jack. I'm his guardian, and I've established successor guardians for him. I've got the titles to the car. I've got the mortgage to the house. I've got the password to the app on my phone. If you haven't found that cool passcodes app, it's awesome. It keeps all of your apps on there, but you can't access it without the password. And more. So that is my box of love to my loved ones. So that when I'm gone, it's all there. They don't have to make the difficult decisions. They don't have to figure out where to put me. It's all there. And because I have made those decisions now where I'm fully capable of doing it, I've unloaded that burden from myself. Now that I'm unfettered by that angst of, I have that living will I haven't executed, I can more fully enjoy life. So I've discovered the way to do that after so many years of at home and being kind of isolated and spending so much time in doctor's offices and so forth, is I need to look up and reach out and step forward. And one of the ways that I've done that is through my writing as a columnist. I've met incredible people because I've looked up and I've reached out and I've said to people like Kim Valentini, I think you have a really interesting story. Or people like Kevin Warren from the Vikings. I think you've got an interesting story. And so my world has expanded because I've had the courage to reach out to people. And the step forward part, I've gone on a Smile Network mission to Peru. I was talking to Pam Borton earlier, and it was life-changing for me because when my daughter had the bone marrow transplant, we were at the University of Minnesota Children's Hospital, the old one, not that fabulous 5-star hotel, new one. I was grousing because it was an 8x10 room, and we had a chair that stretched out into a bed, and it just wasn't, a very comfortable place to spend a month. And then I went to Peru, and I met these women who tearfully brought their little babies into the hospital where the paint was peeling off the ceiling and there was no soap in the bathroom. And you were told to bring your own toilet paper. And whereas I had crabbed about the 8x10 room, when we were able to get a working elevator to take the patients upstairs, I saw that they were lined up in this tiny little room, one bed after another, sometimes 2 babies to a bed. And so, despite the difficulties that I've had in my life, I was reminded so very dramatically that everything is relative. And everybody has something. And I actually had to go back and apologize to the doctor at the university who I complained to at the room, explaining that I'd had this aha moment when I was in Peru. So, for me, moving forward, now that I'm unfettered by those unpleasant tasks, I've been able to live a better life. And the title of my book, Bitter or Better, came about as a result of a conversation I had with a priest a few months after my husband died, where I was unloading to him after a couple of glasses of wine. Is there a theme here about the couple glasses of wine today? About the people who'd been so fabulous to me and my family, and then the people who had disappeared or been so uncooperative. And I posed to him that universal question of, why do the good die young? Why will these people who live unhealthy lifestyles, unlike my husband who ran 4 marathons, who can't even bother to call family to check in on them after such a tragic loss, why will they live to be 100 years old? And my husband died at 54. He said, Caryn, I can't explain why those things have happened. I can't tell you why you've had this adversity. I can't tell you why other people have behaved the way that they have. All I can tell you is that in the face of adversity, we all have a choice. And the choice is very clear. It's these 3 little words. We can be bitter or we can be better. So I choose better. I'm off tomorrow to see my baby put on her cap and gown and to tell her that despite everything that she's been through in her short lifetime, it is possible to live a wonderful life, especially when you have the kind of support and community that we have here today. Thank you for sticking around. I know it's happy hour that's really keeping you here, and enjoy it. Thank you for your attention.